Hey everyone, welcome back to Brownlow Books of Canada 2022 in order of how they were kicked off. So that leads me to my first book here, Life in the City of Dirty Water, a Memoir of Healing by Clayton Thomas-Muller. So, for people who don't know, the City of Dirty Water is Winnipeg. I mean, it's very obvious once you start reading the book, but if you're like, what's the City of Dirty Water? It's Winnipeg. The Assiniboine River meets the Red River. It's very, very murky water. I've been to Winnipeg. It is just like, that's mud, right? No, it's very brown, murky water. So, in Cree, it means murky water. Life in the City of Dirty Water. Alright, we've got that out of the way. P.S. I fucking loved my time in Winnipeg. We were only there for 4 days, but I loved it. I enjoyed it. Food was good. Place was awesome. People were nice. Good history. I enjoyed it a lot. I'll just say that right off the bat. People who give Winnipeg shit are assholes because they've probably never been there. You can't give Winnipeg shit until you've been there. Alright? Alright. So, at the time of filming on Goodreads, there are basically 1,300 ratings, and we're coming out to a 3.61 on average. We will get that out of the way right now. So, first things I'm going to do is actually tell you what I disliked about the book. As I said, it's a memoir. It feels kind of horrible to be criticizing it like a book, you know. Someone was vulnerable and put themselves out there and told you about their lives and their problems and all that kind of stuff. And in this case, how they healed or are healing. And we're just like, nah, you know, it's a shitty thing to do, but here we are. So, things I did not like about it. Section 2, it's broken up into like 5 sections with different names, and it's got the Inuktitut language. I think I said that right. And then the English and the Cree. So, the second section feels very different from the first section, but then the 3 sections after that kind of like, it makes a little more sense, but it's still kind of disjointed at times. But like, if you were telling stories to your friends, it's also kind of how you would be speaking. So it's a little more written as like, I'm speaking rather than I am writing. Which for me was kind of a little all over the place, right? But the second section in particular is where Clayton starts going on about all of the environmental and indigenous organizations he's been a part of. We get bogged down in people's names and these organizations and all these conferences he's been to and all the acronyms for all these things. And it's kind of like, I'm never going to remember any of these. They're just words to me at this point. Like, it does not matter. Hopefully we're not going to come back to this kind of thing. But it also kind of read like a resume. Like, oh, look at all these things I've done. And I'm like, I get it. You're an environmental activist who is Cree. But, like, I'm a little bogged down in names right now. There'd be like an entire paragraph that was just like the names of these conferences run by these organizations that are headed by these people, and I'm like, okay, you went there, great. Can we? So that was my biggest dislike about it, is that I sometimes got bogged down in names and organizations and places, and then when he references them later, I'm like, oh, which one was that? Why did we care about that one? Like, it was a little much for me, especially acronyms. Cannot do acronyms. So, what I liked about the book. I recognize that I really like that Clayton recognizes his faults. He's like, I'm being hypocritical. Here I am trying to like run an organization that's trying to make a better life for all these like indigenous youth, and at the same time I'm like selling drugs to rich white kids. Like, so like he is part of it, but he's also trying to make it better. So I like that he recognizes that he's being hypocritical in that instance. And, you know, occasionally other things. Like, I love that he's recognizing that in himself, because that is part of moving on and healing. So, I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed how he tells us white people about life on reserves and like all these Cree things, all these other indigenous groups that do all these other cool different things like sun dances and whatnot, like the sweat lodges. Like, he really dumbed it down for us, but it wasn't like talking down to us. It was like, this is a thing where we do this. So I went and we did this. And I'm like, great, because I had no idea what that was. Thank you for letting me know. I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed Stories from the Trapline in northern Manitoba. I grew up on like a mostly forested farm with my grandparents, like every weekend, stay there for a couple weeks in the summer kind of thing. Like, so like going out into the wild and doing the things you do with your family, that really got me. I enjoyed that a lot, especially now that my grandfather is no longer around and I don't do those things as much. So I really enjoyed that. But I think my absolute most favorite part, and I say this because I copied a page and a half of this onto my fucking Facebook because I was like, people need to read this, was actually the chapter I hate the most, the second chapter. The first page and a half, 2 pages, is a story about his Uncle Alec. So I don't want to spoil it. The section is called Warrior. His Uncle Alec is a badass, but it ended up with him in jail. Because what is a law is not what's always right. Which is a huge fucking thing for me because this world. So that was probably my absolute most favorite part of it. Like, I really enjoyed all of the Cree things, all of the food, all of the different things that they do, either, you know, just hanging out with their family on the trapline or going to these like group gatherings of things. Like, really interesting. But like I said, overall, a little disjointed, but like, if you can follow it, it is worth the read. Which brings me down to my end. I told you it has a average of 3.61 on Goodreads. I'm still kind of not rating things, and I feel like it's especially odd to rate a memoir. Because like I said before, people are making themselves vulnerable and telling us about their lives in hopes that like we can learn from their mistakes and we can see these things and be like, oh shit, we should do that too, kind of thing. Like, the environment can't defend itself. You know? So, in addition to having a super pretty cover, it's all the lovely cover. I love the cover so much. My giant fucking eye just staring at you. So, I mean, I am giving it a good thumbs up. I understand why it's in the Canada Reads list. I also kind of understand why it was kicked off first from the final list. I have not, at this point, read the other 4 books on the list, but I feel like a lot of the times memoirs don't get as far because they're not necessarily a universal connection that people get from, like, fiction. So, yeah. Here we are, 1 out of 5 of Canada Reads. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.